we are at the beginning of a very classic late big cycle debt crisis, when the supply-demand gap, when you're producing too much debt.
The United States is in a bigger mess than ever. American patriots are finally coming to face the stark reality that our economy is not in a good position and that the current party in control is doing nothing to stop our losses. But it's far worse than most Americans realize. The amount of insanity coming to the United States this year and the upcoming months is going to be one of the most challenging things to date, and the United States is not prepared. Listen up, patriots, because this is why the U.S. market is going to crash this year and what you need to do about it. Currently, the United States is facing an even bigger issue than we've faced in almost every previous year. With the current administration, this might not come as a shocker, but it can still be difficult to believe that right now we're facing an even worse economic collapse than we faced during the Great Depression. Surely, this sounds insane, because the Great Depression was one of the biggest instances of economic collapse that we've seen to date. For Americans, though, we're already seeing the numbers and the proof. The evidence is all there, and many Americans are missing the crucial data. During the Great Depression, the average rent was 18.7% of the average monthly salary, and a new house cost 225% of the average yearly salary. Now, these numbers sound horrible, but many patriots will probably recognize that these numbers are not as horrendous as they sound. Today, the statistics are actually much worse, and the seeming inadequacies of our government's economic decisions have only grown. In 2021, the average rent was 26% of the average monthly income, and a new house was 788% of the average yearly income. Even during the Great Depression, the statistics show that both renting and home ownership were more achievable than in today's economy. But the Great Depression isn't the only depression that doesn't sound as bad when you contrast it with today's economy. The median home price in the United States was $431,000 in the latter part of 2023, making it one of the most expensive years to date. While this already sounds horrific and shows that American patriots are dealing with the prospect of some of the worst economic collapses to date, it only gets worse. In 2007, before the 2008 economic collapse, the housing market was sitting at a very reasonable average price of $217,900, while that price fell to $197,100 in 2008. What's now being called a silent depression, 2023 has already found its way into one of the more concerning positions for American patriots. Prices of groceries have gone up. Prices of gas are through the roof, and almost everything is more expensive. With the failure of our current administration to do anything to keep production on American soil, this is only going to get worse. The economy is suffering. Banks are closing. It's becoming almost impossible for Americans to sustain themselves. Prices during the 1930s and the Great Depression paint a horrifying picture of America's future. The cost of a car during the 1930s was $600, while the average salary was $1,300. Compare that to today, when the cost of a new car is on average $48,000 and the average salary is $56,000. And it becomes obvious to anyone that our market is suffering. Unfortunately for the American patriot, this is only the beginning, and 2024 has much worse to offer. Even the official news sources are admitting that a recession will hit the United States in 2024. This, however, presents the American patriot with several problems. We are already facing unprecedented economic issues, and so if 2024 is expected to crash even more, our economy may very well reach a turning point. There is no coming back. The central bank is expected to slash interest rates by a shocking 275 base points to combat this, but at most, this will only provide a band-aid for the broken dam that's soon gonna overflow. The United States gross domestic product expanded by 4.9% in the third quarter, its highest growth rate in 2 years, but this will not be enough. The unemployment rate continues to creep up at a horrifying 3.7%, which continues to steadily creep upwards. With talk of more economic restrictions in play as well, this number can only be expected to climb. The historical precedent for these large levels of spending by government sources actually comes from the pandemic. After the vaccine was manufactured and many states had naturally begun operating their economies again, the new president made a decision that would turn the economy into a much worse state than it was already in during this time. Rather than allowing the economy to recover naturally, the president and the Democratic Party opted to continue keeping government expenditures much higher than they were before the pandemic. For this reason, as well as the continued printing of new money by the Federal Reserve that has debased our default currency, the US dollar, and left the prices of eggs, milk, food, and gas skyrocketing. In an effort to curb these horrifying new developments, the federal government continued to increase interest rates, with government spending much higher than pre-pandemic levels. In the past 110 years, American patriots have only seen the monetary supply drop this sharply once, and that was during the 1930s Great Depression. This shocking reveal is enough to make any American patriot concerned for the upcoming months. The beginning of 2024 is already looking to be much worse than 2023 and 2022. And this is confirmed by official government sources and economists. The issue, however, arises in the fact that 2023 and 2022 were already some of the worst years to date economically since the Great Depression. The bottom 80% of earners now have significantly less savings than they did before the pandemic, making this one of the most critical situations America has faced in a long time. This is ground zero for an economic collapse. But what changes can be made for America to recover from these economic issues and forthcoming struggles in the upcoming months? Currently, the American patriot and homeowner cannot make too many changes to the economy. While Americans are able to prepare for an upcoming economic collapse, which we will explain a little later, there are only a few ways that America as a whole will be able to prevent the extension of economic collapse as it currently sits. With the current economic state of America, the biggest issue arises from federal interference in the market. The Federal Reserve is attempting to prevent the economic collapse we're seeing now, but through unsuccessful methods. While America continues to grow more economically unstable, the Federal Reserve and the current administration refuse to cut spending and the regulations that created this situation in the first place. With these years being the worst since the Great Depression, this failure is made more obvious with each passing day. Stock prices are falling and becoming more unstable, along with banks closing and more centralization of monetary control. Artificially created interest rates are not as beneficial as the Fed makes it out to be. These will also potentially cause more turmoil in the market and a lack of balance as this crisis continues to play out. For the American homeowner, patriot, and prepper, being ready for this economic crash is equally important. One of the most crucial aspects of preparing for a crash like this is knowing about it, so congratulations, the first step is already complete. From here, however, it should be your task to prepare supplies, prep your house and family for an upcoming economic struggle, and transfer your assets into more stable forms. The U.S. dollar is unstable and will only continue to become worth less as the Federal Reserve pumps the economy full of useless paper. Each dollar you own will be worth far less as the sum of total money everyone has becomes greater. Just like one grain of sand against a whole beach. This will soon make inflation rates skyrocket as prices are also driven up artificially by federal regulations and failed attempts to save the economy. Using other more stable forms of money such as the gold standard may be an incredibly important aspect in the upcoming crisis. Prepping by having stable fuel sources, generators, vehicles and means of transportation, and shelf-stable food is also crucial. Toiletry supplies should be stockpiled as well. If we've learned anything from the Great Depression, it's that these are some of the first supplies to go and some of the most crucial. The Conference Board, more than 1,200 executives listed a recession as their top concern. This new survey showed that 37% of U.S. chief executives are prepared for a recession in the year ahead, something that should give pause for any American concerned about whether or not supplies will be readily accessible as the year moves forward. With many executives already prepared to shut down their companies and stockpile their resources, Americans need to understand the crucial aspect of this new development. The 91% on the optimism index is a far cry beneath the much higher average, marking the 24th consecutive month below the 50-year average of 98. If you aren't optimistic about this coming year, join the crowd. Luckily, many Americans are recognizing this upcoming crisis and moving to prevent it. While it's not likely that this crisis will be deterred, and the upcoming year will most likely be the worst yet, the current administration is finally being exposed for being incompetent when it comes to deciding the economic path of the United States. While the Fed is expected to be cutting interest rates sometime next year, this may very well be too late for the American citizens. The Fed has stated that the rate will likely not return to zero for the foreseeable future, meaning that we have a long journey ahead. The current interest rate is at the highest level for the past 23 years, something that isn't expected to change much in the upcoming months. And while the Federal Reserve predicts this rate will go down, it may not. American patriots have to prepare for the potential that this rate, along with the prices of food, gas, and housing, will only continue to rise in the upcoming months and years. Once companies that took a business loan out in 2020 need to refinance, this could present a horrific issue and lead to more closures and bankruptcies in the upcoming months. While it's likely that America is already aware of this, it seems that even the banks are suffering as a result of the bad financial decisions of this administration. JP Morgan Chase had profits fall 15% from the year before, marking a stark contrast to any success seen after the recovery from the 2008 financial crisis. For American patriots, it's time to prepare before the United States economy becomes much worse, with inflation on the rise, interest rates the highest have been in decades, and many statistics showing that Americans are in a worse place than they have been since during the midst of the Great Depression. This could mark one of the worst years America has seen to date. Preparing for the worst and stockpiling the supplies needed to survive is too important to ignore. With the United States economy about to crash in 2024, American patriots need to prepare.